Moscow, 1581. The heart of the Russian Tsardom beats within the cold stone walls of the Alexandrovskaya Sloboda. Ivan the Terrible, Tsar of all Russia, a man whose name has become a synonym for brutality, paces in his private chambers. He is a man fractured by paranoia, haunted by the ghosts of those he has killed, and enraged by a perceived betrayal. His son and heir, also named Ivan, stands before him. An argument erupts, violent words about a wife, a pregnancy, and the future of the dynasty. And then, in a blind rage, the Tsar raises his iron-tipped staff and brings it down. The blow is fatal. The heir to the Russian throne dies at the hands of his own father. The story, as it has been told for centuries, is one of the most chilling tales of filicide in history. A monstrous father murdering his own son in a fit of psychotic rage, cementing his legacy as the Terrible. This single act has defined Ivan for over 400 years, portrayed in paintings, operas, and films as the ultimate proof of his madness. But what if this foundational pillar of his infamy is built on a lie? What if the entire narrative, the murderous rage, the lethal blow to the head, is a grotesque fabrication, a piece of political propaganda so effective it has become immutable historical fact? What really happened in those chambers? Who is Ivan the Terrible beyond the caricature of a monster? And why has this particular lie persisted with such vicious tenacity? Today, we venture into the tortured mind of Russia's first Tsar, into the shadowy politics of the Oprichnina, and unearth the truth behind the legend. History refuses to question. Ivan's path to tyranny was not preordained. He was not born terrible. He was born into a vacuum of power. Crowned the Grand Prince of Moscow at just 3 years old, his childhood was a masterclass in trauma. The Russian Boyard nobility, the powerful feudal lords, swarmed like vultures over a dying regime. They manipulated, poisoned, and murdered his mother and her allies right in front of him. The young Ivan was a pawn, left to watch as his potential guardians were arrested and dragged screaming from his chambers. He learned one lesson early, and internalized it forever. Trust no one. Power is the only truth. In 1547, at just 16, he took a monumental step. He crowned himself Tsar of all Russia, a title derived from Caesar, claiming divine right and absolute authority, a move meant to break the Bojar's power forever. His early reign, guided by wise advisors and his beloved first wife Anastasia, showed promise. He reformed the law code, established a standing army, and called the first genuine Russian parliament. For a moment, it seemed Russia might have a reformer, not a tyrant. But then, Anastasia died suddenly in 1560. Ivan was convinced she had been poisoned by the boyars. The last thread of his sanity snapped. This was the turning point, the moment the torturer was truly born. He established the Oprichnina state within a state, a personal territory ruled by his black-clad doghead, brandishing secret police. The Oprichniki were his fanatical enforcers, loyal only to him. Their purpose was to root out treason, real or imagined. Their methods were pure terror. It was during this period that the myth of Ivan, as a raving lunatic, was carefully constructed, and it was during this period that his son Tsarevich, Ivan Ivanovich, grew from a boy into a man. The heir was not a meek victim. He was his father's son, intelligent, ambitious, and ruthless. He accompanied the Tsar on military campaigns and, by some accounts, even approved of the Oprichnina's purges. He was being groomed for power, which brings us to November 1581. The official story, propagated first by a Jesuit priest and papal envoy named Antonio Passivino, and later immortalized by the painter Ilya Repin, is horrifying in its simplicity. The Tsar, enraged to find his daughter Enlotha, Tsarevich's wife, wearing immodest clothing, attacked her, causing a miscarriage. His son confronted him. A furious argument ensued. The Tsar, in a blind rage, struck his son in the head with his pointed staff, dealing a mortal wound. He then collapsed in a fit of remorse, cradling his dying son. It's a perfect, Shakespearean tragedy. But the historical record tells a very different, more complicated story. Contemporary Russian chronicles, the primary sources closest to the event, describe a bitter argument between father and son over the ongoing Livonian War. The Tsarevich was critical of his father's failure to relieve the siege of Pskov. The fight was political, not personal. In the heat of the argument, the Tsar did strike his son, but the blow was not to the head, and it was not immediately fatal. The chronicles state that Tsar struck his son on the temple and the cheeks. The heir fell, bleeding. The Tsar was frantic with grief and horror. The best doctors were summoned from Moscow. For 11 days, they tended to the Tsarevich. He did not die from a single, murderous blow. He died from a fever and infection that set in after the injury. In the 16th century, even a minor wound could turn septic and kill. The narrative of a slow, agonizing death by infection is medically plausible. The story of an instant killing is dramatic, but it is not what the original sources say. So, where did the murder story come from? The answer is political warfare. Antonio Passivino was not a neutral observer. He was a diplomat for a hostile power, the Vatican, which was actively at odds with Orthodox Russia. His mission was to draw Russia into a Catholic coalition against the Ottoman Empire. Ivan refused. Passavino's account of the killing, written after his failed mission and spread throughout Europe, was a deliberate piece of black propaganda. It was designed to paint the Russian Tsar as an inhuman monster, a madman, unfit for diplomacy, a beast who killed his own flesh and blood. It was a weapon, and it worked perfectly. The story fed directly into Western European prejudices about the barbaric, Asiatic East. It confirmed everything they wanted to believe about the schismatic Orthodox Russians. The myth was too useful, too sensational, too morally satisfying to be questioned. It was repeated, embellished, and cemented into history. But the truth is far more tragic. Ivan the Terrible was a monster of his own making. Yes, he ordered tens of thousands of deaths. He tortured and executed with abandon. But he did not, in a single fit of rage, murder his heir. The death of his son was a terrible accident born of a violent argument, an accident that plunged the Tsar into a final, bottomless despair from which he never recovered. He died just 2 years later, leaving his sickly younger son Fyodor on the throne. A succession crisis that would soon plunge Russia into the bloody time of troubles. Why does the lie persist? For the same reason the story of Catherine's horse persists. It simplifies a complex, terrifying figure into a sizzly understood monster. It provides a clean, moral ending. The tyrant is punished by his own evil. The reality that a man responsible for so much suffering could also genuinely love his son and be broken by his accidental death. Too messy, too psychologically complex. The myth of Ivan killing his son survived because history is written by the victors, and in the arena of propaganda, Ivan's enemies were victorious. It survived because it's a better story. It survived because we are uncomfortable with the idea that a villain can also be a grieving father. We prefer our monsters to be simple, but history is not simple. Ivan the Terrible's true legacy is not a single, fictional act of filicide, but the very real, systematic terror of the Oprichnina. It is the rivers of blood he willingly spilled, the cities he ravaged, the foundation of autocracy he poured in stone and fear. That is monstrous enough. He does not need a myth to make him terrible. The truth does that all on its own. To remember him for a lie is to misunderstand the nature of power, the banality of evil, and the complex, tortured humanity of the man who became the monster. The real story is not about a single blow, but about a lifetime of them, and that is a truth far more terrifying than any fiction. The story of Ivan the Terrible is just one of history's tortured pasts. Whose legacy should we dissect next? The blood-soaked reputation of Vlad the Impaler, or the whispered secrets of the Romanovs' final days? Tell us in the comments below. If you seek to uncover the truth buried beneath the lies, subscribe to Tortured Past. We are just getting started.